The first thing they noticed was her silence. Not defiance, not fear, just a kind of stillness that unsettled the air around her, like the way the sky stills before a storm breaks. She stood at the edge of the federal building's security checkpoint in Charleston, South Carolina. A line of impatient civilians shuffled forward behind her, the scent of wet pavement rising from their shoes. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rain clung to the windows like old memories refusing to let go. The woman was tall, maybe 70, with dark slacks pressed to military sharpness and a navy peacoat that looked a generation old. Her hair was snow-white and pulled into a tight braid that reached just past her collar. Her expression gave nothing away. Not the faint irritation of being delayed. Not confusion. Not age. Just presence. Officer Trent Marley, 32, all jawline and entitlement, tapped the ID in his hand again like it might change its expiration date if he looked long enough. "This license is out of date, ma'am," he said, voice already lifting for the crowd to hear. "You're going to need current identification." The woman blinked once, slowly. Then she reached into her coat and withdrew a creased envelope marked with the blue seal of the Department of Defense. She handed it over. "My clearance letter, effective through today," she said. Marley barely glanced at the contents before waving over his partner, Officer Gentry, a wide man with tired eyes and too much belt. "Gentry, secondary screening," Marley muttered. "We've got a situation." A situation. She said nothing to that. They led her to a folding table by the wall, beneath a camera and a red digital clock that ticked with brutal precision. Marley pointed at the faded olive duffel slung over her shoulder. "That bag. Put it up here." She complied without a word. Her fingers, though weathered, moved with careful precision. As she set the duffel down, Gentry caught a glimpse of something on her wrist, a small tattoo, faded but unmistakably military in design. He said nothing. Marley pulled on blue latex gloves with slow, theatrical flair. "Is there anything in here that could be considered dangerous?" he asked, loud enough for others to hear. "That depends on your definition of danger," she said quietly. The answer made Marley pause. Then he gave a performative chuckle. "Cute." He opened the bag. Inside were the usual things: a book of poetry, a small worn photo album held shut with a band of twine, a pocket watch. Then came the military file folder. No markings, no insignia, just a name handwritten in faded ink. Colleen Weller. "Is this yours?" Gentry asked, glancing at the name. The woman nodded once. "Yes." Marley pulled out a metal case next. He opened it. Bronze, obscure, not the kind they hand out for showing up. "What is this?" he asked. "Service recognition," she replied. "For what?" "Something I am not permitted to discuss." That answer, combined with the firm steadiness of her voice, caused a ripple of uncertainty between the two men. But Marley leaned into performance. "You know," he said, holding the medal between two gloved fingers, "people fake a lot of stuff. Medals, files, uniforms, whole stolen valor thing." She looked at him then, just looked. And for a split second, something old and heavy passed through her expression. Not anger, not insult. Something deeper, like she had heard this before, too many times. He put the medal down more carefully than he had intended. "You planning to put on a show today?" he asked, trying to recover the upper hand. "I have an appointment upstairs," she said. "Room 1426. "What kind of appointment?" Her answer was almost a whisper. "Recognition." Gentry turned to say something, but stopped. A tall man in a dark suit had stepped through the side entrance. Civilian clothes. But his bearing was unmistakable, back straight, eyes scanning. He carried himself like someone used to giving orders no one questioned. The woman did not turn to see him, but she shifted slightly, straightening her shoulders as if muscle memory had kicked in. The man approached the checkpoint. Marley glanced up, annoyed. "Sir, this area is—" Is this woman being detained? The man asked sharply. Marley's voice faltered. She's being screened. The man turned to the woman. Ms. Weller? She nodded once. Yes. He looked at Marley, then at the duffel. Then, without a word, he opened his coat and showed a badge. Silver, etched with 3 stars. The checkpoint fell silent. Return her belongings, the man said. Marley's lips parted, but nothing came out. The man stepped closer. Now. Gentry moved first, hurriedly repacking the items into the duffel, his earlier suspicion replaced with quiet panic. Forgive the delay, ma'am, the man said to her, voice steady. The president is waiting upstairs. The line of civilians behind the rope had gone silent. Phones were raised. Eyes followed her every movement as she took back the duffel and slung it over her shoulder. She turned to Marley, studied him for a breath too long. Respect, she said, is not about who salutes you. It is about how you see people when no one is watching. Then she walked away, leaving the silence behind her. Outside, the rain had stopped, and inside the checkpoint, no one asked another question. The elevator climbed in silence. It was a slow, deliberate ascent. 12 floors above the atrium, the lights inside the cab casting soft shadows over the worn creases of Colleen Weller's coat. The man beside her said nothing. He did not need to. His presence was enough. Formal, contained, a quiet buffer between her and the questions that might still be forming downstairs. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes forward, his badge now tucked away. She watched the numbers climb. 9, 10, 11. A faint hum filled the space, broken only by the occasional shudder of the cables. The elevator stopped with a soft chime. The doors opened onto a hallway lined with photographs, grainy black and white portraits of men in uniform, plaques beneath them with words like valor, distinction, and legacy. None of them featured women. He gestured gently. This way. Room 1426 was at the far end, past a security door and a discreet biometric scanner. The hallway narrowed, the lights softer now, the air quieter, as if sound itself was asked to behave. When the final door opened, a woman in a crisp navy suit stood to greet them. Ms. Weller, we are honored. Colleen gave a faint nod. Thank you. The room inside was warm. Wood-paneled walls, thick carpet, an American flag standing in the corner. A single round table sat in the center, with 3 chairs. One was already occupied by a woman in her 40s, sharp-featured, no nonsense. She stood as Colleen entered. Dr. Mira, Defense Intelligence, the woman said, offering a hand. Colleen did not take it. I do not shake hands anymore. Dr. Mira retracted hers without offense. Of course. The man who had escorted her stepped back and took up a post near the door. Silent now, watchful. Colleen set the duffel on the table. Her movements were methodical. Each action, each pause, calibrated with military efficiency, yet touched by something else, the wear of decades, the gravity of memory. You requested an audience, Mira began, not for debrief, but for confirmation. Colleen met her eyes. Yes. Of what exactly? Colleen reached into the duffel and withdrew a thin folder, its edges frayed, the paper inside aged but carefully preserved. Davenport, November 1979, Operation Hawk's Rest. 8 men went in, 2 came out. Mira frowned. That operation is sealed. It was, Colleen said. And you believe now is the time for it to be reopened? I believe, Colleen said slowly, that the time for pretending it never happened is over. Mira opened the folder. The first page held only a single photograph, a black helicopter over snow-covered hills. No names, no insignia. I was told you were linguistics, Mira said. Support, not field. Colleen tilted her head. I was told that too. Mira stared at her for a long moment. You should not have survived that mission. I did. And you never filed for commendation, never requested inclusion in after-action reports. I was instructed not to. By whom? Colleen smiled faintly, though it did not reach her eyes. Does it matter? They are dead. All of them. Miara leaned back. You are asking us to verify a ghost. I am asking you to stop pretending that ghosts do not leave footprints. The room fell silent. Then Colleen reached into the duffel once more and removed a small, unmarked audio cassette. She placed it on the table. I carried that across 4 borders. I buried it twice. It contains everything. Names, coordinates, orders given and broken. Mira looked at the cassette as if it were radioactive. Why now? She asked. Colleen's voice was steady. Because 2 weeks ago, I received a call from a VA hospital in Montana. They found the last man from my team. Alzheimer's. No family. He forgot his own name, but he remembered mine. She paused. He died alone. After 40 years of silence. I will not let the last thing he did vanish into a locked cabinet. Miara exhaled slowly. Do you understand what happens if this gets confirmed? I do. This will upend a great deal of narrative. Colleen looked toward the window. Beyond the glass, the city sprawled under gray skies. Distant church bells rang noon. She spoke quietly. I have never asked to be remembered. I have never asked to be thanked. But I will not allow the truth to die just because it makes someone else uncomfortable. The man near the door shifted slightly. His posture had changed, more alert now. Miara closed the folder. We will investigate the authenticity. If what you say is true, it is, Colleen said, then history may have to be rewritten. Colleen stood, lifting the duffel back over her shoulder. History always rewrites itself, she said. I am just making sure it gets one part right. As she walked toward the door, Mira called after her. You never asked for a medal. Why come back at all? Colleen turned at the threshold. Because someone will. She left the room. Out in the hallway, the photographs stared back at her. Rows of uniformed men, captured in frozen moments of valor. None of them knew what it cost her to walk past without flinching. The elevator was waiting. As the doors slid shut, her reflection stared back at her. Tired eyes, steel spine, the last soldier of a forgotten unit, still standing. The motel room was small and clean in the way only chain motels tried to be. Beige walls, patterned carpet, a single desk lamp casting golden light onto a folded map, a stack of papers, and an untouched cup of black coffee. Colleen Weller stood near the window, watching the parking lot fill with dusk. Her duffel rested on the chair, still zipped. Her uniform, the one no one was supposed to see, remained tucked away. She had not turned on the television. The silence helped her think, helped her remember. She touched the edge of the curtain, fingers brushing fabric like it might steady her. The phone rang. Not her cell, the room phone. Landline. No caller ID. She let it ring twice, then answered. You were seen today, said a man's voice. Older, precise. No emotion. I was cleared, Colleen replied. Does not mean you were invisible. I stopped being invisible the moment he opened the bag. A long silence. Then, they are reopening the file. They have no choice. Colleen, the voice said, for the first time using her name, they are not looking for the truth. They are looking for a version of it that does not burn down the walls. She said nothing. You sure you want to keep doing this? She glanced at the duffel. I do not want recognition, she said. I want accuracy. The line clicked off without goodbye. She hung up and walked to the mirror above the dresser. Her reflection looked back at her. Same posture, same eyes, but different. Tired in a way time alone could not explain. Colleen opened the desk drawer. Inside was a notepad, a pen, and a Gideon Bible. She took the notepad, sat on the edge of the bed, and began to write. Not names, not locations, just truths. The kind you never got to say in reports. The kind you carried in your bones. Outside, the wind picked up. The motel sign flickered. A delivery truck rumbled past, and in the distance, maybe a block, maybe 3, came the sound of a single car backfiring. Colleen flinched. Just a breath. Barely noticeable. But it was there. She stood, paced once, twice, then opened the duffel. Out came the cassette. She held it like something sacred, then tucked it under her coat. She stepped outside. The parking lot was mostly empty now. Pale moonlight lit up the hoods of sedans and pickup trucks. Somewhere across the way, a couple argued behind a half-closed window. Colleen kept walking. At the corner of the street, she entered a small diner. Metal stools, neon lights, a jukebox that had not worked in 20 years. The waitress barely glanced up. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." Colleen took a booth facing the door, her back to the wall, always. She sat with her hands wrapped around the cup, letting the heat seep in. She watched the door, watched the people come and go. A man in a trucker's cap, a teenager with bruised knuckles, a woman in scrubs, normal lives, unaware of the things that kept their world intact. She opened the notebook again, wrote one word, Martin, then paused. The door opened, and a young woman in uniform stepped in. Federal security. Same sharp posture, same look of someone trying not to be noticed. But her eyes swept the room until they landed on Colleen. She walked over. "May I sit?" she asked. Colleen nodded. It was Officer Ellis, the one who had not spoken at the checkpoint but had watched everything. Her eyes looked different now, a little older, a little more open. "I looked you up," she said. "You would not find much." "I found enough." Colleen sipped her coffee. Ellis hesitated. "You were never listed in any official record, but I found a photo, blurred, from 1980. A helicopter, a rescue. You were in the background, not named." Colleen did not respond. Ellis leaned in. "Why were you there?" Colleen set down her cup. "I was the reason the others made it out." Ellis exhaled, long and quiet. "I want to learn," she said. "About what?" "Service. Real service. Not just rules and badges." Colleen studied her. "Then you need to understand one thing," she said. "Recognition comes after the war ends, and sometimes the war never ends." Ellis nodded. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Colleen opened the notebook, tore out the page with Martin's name, folded it, and handed it across the table. "When you are ready," she said, "look him up. Ask what he remembers." Ellis took the paper. "What should I say?" "Just your name." Colleen stood. As she left the diner, the bell above the door jingled softly. The wind had shifted, cooler now. She crossed the street alone, the cassette still in her coat pocket. Somewhere behind her, Ellis was reading the note. Somewhere ahead, room 1426 waited with more questions. But for now, Colleen walked into the night, not unseen, not unknown, but unshaken. The elevator rose again. Same route, same lights overhead, same silence. But this time, Colleen Weller did not ride alone. Colonel Grayson stood beside her, hands clasped in front of him. The black folio was gone, but the weight of it seemed to remain, hanging between them like unspoken history. She said nothing. At the 16th floor, the doors opened with a soft chime. A wide hallway stretched out before them, lined with flags, subdued lighting, and polished floors that reflected every step like memory-made glass. At the far end, a set of oak doors and 2 guards in ceremonial uniform standing at attention. Beyond those doors, people waited. And yet, Colleen hesitated. She stepped aside, away from the open elevator, and stood near the wall. A long mirror hung there, ornate, gilded, too polished for a federal building. She looked at herself for a full 10 seconds, then reached into her duffel. From within, she pulled out the folded jacket, the one Officer Rustin had dangled like a trophy hours earlier. She held it up, hands trembling slightly now, not from fear, not from weakness, but from something far more difficult to bear. Memory. The fabric was heavier than it looked, stiff from time, still marked by the faint scent of cedar oil long used to preserve it. Her fingers found the collar, then the sleeves. She slipped it on. One patch was frayed, one metal missing. She did not adjust it. "Ma'am," said Grayson gently, "we can wait as long as you need." "I am ready," she said. He nodded and led the way. As they reached the doors, one of the guards opened them. The light inside was warmer, yellowed by chandeliers and softened by the vaulted ceiling. 100 chairs arranged in concentric arcs faced a raised dais. On that dais, a podium. And beside it, 5 chairs. 4 of them occupied by veterans in dress uniform, elderly, watchful, still upright in ways the years had not bent. Each of them turned when Colleen entered. The 5th chair, hers, sat empty. As she approached, the room grew still. Conversations paused. Even the rustling of programs stopped. A few turned in their seats to see who this was. Most of them did not know her name. Not yet. But someone did. "Colleen," came the voice. Commander Nathan Hale stood as she neared. His frame was thinner now, his once black hair turned to snow. But his eyes, sharp, gray, and relentless, had not changed. Neither had his posture. He extended his hand, but stopped short. Then, with a subtle nod, raised it in salute. She returned it, sharp, clean, precise. Their hands did not touch, but the air between them said everything. "Been a long time," he murmured. "Long enough to forget what we looked like," she answered. He smiled briefly. "Not what we did." She sat. Grayson approached the podium and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "today we honor 5 individuals whose service was never intended to be remembered, not because it lacked value, but because it required silence." A beat passed. The room held its breath. He continued. "Today, that silence ends." There was no applause. Not yet. The tone had not invited it. Instead, he gestured toward a large screen to the side of the stage. Grainy photographs flickered to life. Satellite images, blacked-out reports, blurred names and locations, redacted history. Until one image lingered, a woman in field fatigues standing beside a downed aircraft, bloodied, weapon drawn, eyes locked on something just beyond the frame. No name, no timestamp, just defiance. Gasps came quietly. Some in the audience began whispering. Grayson's voice lowered. The operation known only as Winter Creed took place in 1980. Officially, it did not exist. But unofficially, it saved lives, prevented escalation, and redefined the limits of what was possible behind enemy lines. He looked down at his notes, then set them aside. None of these individuals asked to be thanked. But this country owes them more than gratitude. It owes them truth. He stepped back. An assistant approached the podium and called the first name. Commander Hale stood, walked forward, accepted the medal. then sat without a word. Two others followed, a medic with trembling hands, a woman with a cane whose eyes shone with unshed tears. Quiet recognition, solemn and unadorned. Then the final name was called. Ms. Colleen A. Weller. She stood. Her footsteps were deliberate. She did not march. She did not glide. She simply walked, like someone who had spent a lifetime moving forward no matter what stood in the way. When she reached the podium, Grayson did not pin the medal. He handed it to her. She took it with both hands and held it there. Not for herself, but for all the ones who would never stand in her place. I was told this was a moment of honor, she said, voice steady. But for me, it is one of accountability. She turned, facing the audience now. We served because we were asked. We stayed silent because we were ordered. And we survived because we were lucky. A hush swept the room. No one tells you how long silence can last, or how many names it buries. She raised the medal once more. This does not belong to me. Not entirely. Then she stepped down, walked back to her seat, and said nothing more. The applause came late, not thunderous, not explosive, but slow, rising, building, until the room stood for her, not because of her name, but because they finally understood the cost of not knowing it. The ceremony was over. The chairs were empty now, the murmuring crowd dispersed down long hallways and into elevators. The official photographers had packed up their cameras. The aides collected leftover programs. Outside, the rain had returned, soft now, almost polite. The building seemed quieter than before, as if even its walls were worn from holding so much silence for so long. Colleen Weller sat alone in the reception lounge. The Distinguished Service Cross rested in its velvet case beside her on a low glass table. She had not opened it since accepting it. She did not need to. She knew its shape, its weight, not from this medal, but from others she had carried in other people's names. A young woman approached, civilian, early 30s, tan coat, anxious eyes. She stopped just short of speaking, standing there in awkward hesitation, fingers tightening around a folded program. Colleen looked up slowly. Their eyes met. "You are Weller," the woman said, not asking. I am Jenna Roth. My uncle was Sergeant David Roth. He served in Operation Winter Creed. I never knew the name of the mission until today. My family was only told he died in an accident, a training mishap. That was the official story. Colleen's voice was quiet. That was the only story they were allowed to tell. Jenna sat without asking. She placed the folded program on the table beside the medal case. He used to send us letters, she said. Short, careful, but every now and then he would mention someone, a woman on his team. No name, just her, the one who pulled him out when things went bad. Colleen stared at her. We thought it was a medic, some nameless angel. Jenna hesitated. It was you, wasn't it? Colleen did not answer. She did not need to. I came here today to see if any of it was true, Jenna said. My parents never wanted me to. Said it would not change anything. But hearing your name, seeing your face, I think he meant for someone to remember you. Colleen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, her voice was steady. Your uncle bled for 2 hours behind enemy lines, refused morphine. Kept watch while I radioed extraction. He died 4 days later in a hospital because the name of the country he was in could not be disclosed. Jenna looked away, her jaw tight. No one ever told us any of that. They were not allowed to. Do you think it was worth it? Jenna asked suddenly, eyes fierce now. All this silence, all this buried truth. Was it worth it for the medal? Colleen looked at the case again, then back at her. No. Jenna's voice cracked. Then why didn't you speak up? I did, Colleen said softly. But I spoke where no one was listening. A long silence followed. The storm outside picked up. The windows trembled slightly. Jenna wiped her eyes. It just feels like we were lied to for no reason. There was a reason, Colleen said. Not a good one, not a just one, but a reason. Jenna stood. Her grief had sharpened now, no longer the stunned ache of loss, but the old, bitter wound of being left in the dark. I do not know if I can forgive them, she said. You do not have to, Colleen replied. But understand this. Those of us who lived, we carry the weight of their names, every day. Some of us still hear them in our sleep. Jenna nodded once, then turned and walked away, not looking back. Colleen sat still for a long time. When she finally opened the metal case, she looked not at the decoration, but at the inscription on the back. A name, etched in deliberate block letters, C.A. Weller, no rank, no unit, just her name. The one they could finally say aloud. She closed the case again. Another figure approached from the hallway. It was Officer Adira Ellis, now in civilian clothes, jeans, a gray coat, hair still damp from the weather. She looked unsure of her presence but determined to be there. I saw you leave, she said. Thought I might be intruding. Colleen gestured to the seat beside her. You are not. Adira sat. She studied the metal, the folded program, the silent figure beside her. Can I ask you something? You can. Why didn't you demand recognition years ago? Colleen turned slightly, her eyes distant. Because when you're the only one left, there's no victory in being right alone. Adira exhaled slowly. I keep thinking about what you said at the checkpoint. That respect isn't earned by insignia. It is not. Adira looked down at her hands. I think I have been doing this job for the wrong reasons, she admitted. Authority was easier than purpose. Colleen watched her, then said, Most people confuse the two. A quiet passed between them. Then Adira asked, What do I do with that? Colleen's answer came slowly. You start by remembering that authority is something others give you, but purpose, you have to earn that from yourself. Adira nodded. And if I fail? You will, Colleen said without hesitation. That is part of it. Adira stood. Thank you, for today. Colleen looked at her one last time. Keep your eyes open, Officer Ellis. Some uniforms are invisible. As Adira walked out, the reception lounge emptied behind her. The metal remained on the table. The storm raged outside. Colleen did not move. She had waited 4 decades to be seen. Now she sat with the silence that followed being finally understood, and found it heavier than the silence that had come before. The walls were beige, not government beige, worse. The kind of beige that belonged to mid-tier hotels off highways, designed to offend no one and comfort even fewer. Colleen Weller sat on the edge of the bed, still in the same dark slacks and worn leather shoes. The uniform jacket lay folded on the chair by the window, a navy shape silhouetted against weak lamplight. The Distinguished Service Cross remained inside her bag. She had not touched it since the ceremony. Outside, the wind whistled between buildings. A freight train groaned in the distance. She had not turned on the television. She had no interest in what the world said about her today, because today they knew her name, but not her. On the nightstand sat a single photograph, black and white, warped at the corners. 5 people, young, alert, unshaven, tired. One woman among them, barely in frame, half-shadowed, but unmistakably her. Taken somewhere near the Turkish border, 1980. 3 of the people in that picture had died within days of the shutter's click. She touched it with her fingertips. gently, as if it might bruise. A knock came at the door. Twice. Firm. Hesitant. Colleen stood. Slowly. She opened it halfway. Colonel Grayson stood in the hallway, in civilian clothes now. No medals. No rank. "May I?" he asked. She stepped aside. He carried no briefcase, no folder, just a bottle of bourbon and 2 cups stacked inside one another. He held them up like an offering. "I did not think you drank," she said. "I do not, but I figured it might help." He poured anyway. She sat back down on the bed. He took the chair by the window beside the uniform. He glanced at it once, then looked away. The silence between them stretched for half a minute before he spoke. "Word is spreading," he said. "About you. Online. Quietly. Veterans networks. Some journalists are sniffing around." Colleen exhaled softly. "Let them sniff. Most of it will be guesses. They'll want to know more. They always do, until the part that costs them something." Grayson sipped the bourbon. Winced. "Still terrible." She gave a faint smile. He set the cup down. His expression turned serious. "Your file was marked D-class, black level. That is why we never knew." "I know. There were things in there even I am not cleared to read." "You are not missing anything," she said. "Just pages full of silence." He nodded. "But it was not just the operations. It was the decisions, the risks. You stepped into things no one wanted documented. You made judgment calls most people spend a lifetime avoiding." She did not respond. Instead, she stood and walked toward her duffel, opened it, took out a small wooden box, the kind used to hold medals that were never meant to be displayed. She opened it and removed a thin strip of ribbon and 1 bent pin. "This one," she said, holding it out, "was for retrieving a man who no longer had a face. His own team left him behind. I carried him 6 kilometers uphill, wrapped in half a tent." Grayson stared at the pin. "I do not recognize that citation." "You wouldn't. It was given to me in a back room. No paperwork, just a nod from someone whose name was probably fake." She returned it to the box. "I did not come back for applause," she said. "I came back because no one else could speak for them anymore." "You did more than that," Grayson said. "You reminded us what service costs." "No," she corrected gently. "I reminded you that some debts are never paid, only remembered." They sat in silence again, the kind that settles when there is nothing to prove. Then he said, "You should know. We have confirmed 5 other operations linked to your team. Some of your old comrades, Hale, Foster, Gutierrez, they want to speak. They want people to know." Colleen looked down at her hands. "Then let them speak," she said. "I carried silence for 40 years. It is not mine anymore." Grayson stood, collected the empty cups, reached the door. He paused before opening it. "I never asked. Why now? Why this month? This year?" Colleen looked back at the photograph. "Because time ran out for the last of them, and because I did not want the only truth left to be the lie they wrote for us." Grayson nodded once. "I will be in touch." He left. She locked the door behind him. Then she returned to the window. The glass was cold beneath her palm. Far below, headlights moved like distant stars. People went on living. She picked up the jacket and held it against her chest. Tomorrow, they would talk about her, debate her, archive her. But tonight, in a cheap hotel off a quiet road, she let herself remember the voices that would never be heard again. And for the first time in decades, she wept. The coffee shop was quiet, the kind found near courthouses and government buildings. All dark wood and muted jazz, designed more for waiting than comfort. Rain tapped softly on the windows, and the smell of burnt espresso lingered faintly in the air. Colleen Weller sat in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. She was not drinking from it, just holding it, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Across from her sat Officer Adira Ellis, now off-duty, in plain clothes, nervous. She stirred a packet of sugar into her tea even though she had not taken a sip. Colleen broke the silence first. "You asked to meet, so ask." Adira hesitated, then looked up. Her voice was steadier than it had been at the checkpoint. "What happens to people like you when the story finally gets told?" Colleen studied her. "Nothing. The world moves on. Headlines fade. The recognition arrives years late and half blind, and the ones who applauded yesterday forget your name tomorrow. Then why do it?" Colleen's answer came without pause. "Because truth, even delayed, is a form of justice." Adira looked down. "I have been thinking about the way I stood there that day, watching it happen, knowing it was wrong, and I did nothing. You were not the only one, but I was closest," Adira said, "and it has not sat right since." Colleen nodded. "That discomfort? Hold on to it. That is the beginning of change." They sat in silence again, the kind that builds slowly, not awkward, but earned. Finally, Adira asked, "Were you ever afraid?" Colleen leaned back, eyes distant. "Always. But I learned to make fear useful. It sharpens you. Until the mission ends. And then it stays in your bones." Adira's hands curled around her cup. "I think I want to transfer units. Maybe apply for Veterans Affairs detail, or intelligence security. Something with purpose." Colleen nodded once, as if granting permission she did not need to give. "You would be good at that," she said, "but not if you are running from guilt. Only if you are walking toward responsibility." Adira's throat tightened. She looked up. "Do you think that's what you were doing? All those years, staying silent? Were you walking toward something? Or just surviving it?" Colleen's gaze turned to the window, where pedestrians passed in the drizzle. "I used to think I was preserving something. A code. A promise. But over time, I realized I was just protecting people who had long stopped protecting me." A pause. "I was surviving. But survival is not living. It is just staying quiet long enough to become a ghost in your own story." Adira swallowed hard. "And now?" "Now," Colleen said, her voice low, "I have outlived the mission, and I have to decide what parts of myself are worth bringing back." The cafe door opened, and a cold breeze followed a young man inside, hair damp, civilian hoodie, earbuds in. He brushed past their table without looking, completely unaware of who sat just inches from him. Adira watched him, then looked back at Colleen. "Do you want people to know? Really know?" "I want them to care enough to ask, and be quiet long enough to hear." Adira pulled something from her coat pocket, a sealed envelope. She slid it across the table. "What is this?" Colleen asked. "It is a formal letter," Adira said, "requesting to testify on your behalf. I want to help file an appeal to retroactively honor your unit under a named citation. Not just you, all of them." Colleen did not touch the envelope. She just looked at Adira for a long moment. "You do not owe me this." "I am not doing it for you," Adira said. "I am doing it because the version of me who stood at that checkpoint needs to grow up." Colleen finally reached for the envelope, slipped it into her coat without a word. Then, "You ever hear of Operation Kingswell?" Adira shook her head. "Good," Colleen said. "That means it worked." A faint smile ghosted her lips. They sat a moment longer. Then Colleen stood. "One last question," Adira said. "Do you ever wish it had all stayed classified?" Colleen looked down at her, voice soft. "I wish it had never needed to be." She left the cafe. Adira sat in her place a moment longer, watching the door, the empty booth, the coffee going cold. Something in her had changed, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet way that endures. Outside, Colleen pulled her coat tight against the wind and walked toward the bus stop, blending into a world that had just begun to notice her. And yet, she had never stopped noticing it. The cemetery sat just outside the city, past rows of decaying warehouses and train yards now claimed by weeds. No sign marked the entrance, just a gravel path that curved through dying trees and old iron fencing. The wind moved through the bare branches like breath through ribs. Colleen Weller stood alone in Section D, Row 12. No cameras, no applause, just the distant sound of wind through worn flags and her boots on wet grass. 17 headstones, 17 names. Most of them had no flowers. Some had no families left. She carried a small bundle of forget-me-nots, each tied with simple green string. She placed one flower at each headstone without a word. The rhythm was deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if this was her truest language, not speech, but action. When she reached the final marker, she knelt. Sergeant David Roth, 1953 to 1980. Service unacknowledged, sacrifice eternal. She traced the inscription with her finger. Behind her, a car engine idled and stopped. She did not turn. Footsteps approached on gravel, then shifted to soft grass. A woman's voice. "I was not sure I should come." Colleen stood. Jenna Roth. No longer angry, no longer searching, just present. "I did not bring flowers," Jenna said. "It felt performative." Colleen nodded. "Then you brought the right thing." They stood side by side, both looking down at the name carved in stone. "I wanted to tell you something," Jenna said. "They approved the citation. Your unit is being named officially in the Armed Forces records, declassified as of yesterday." Colleen's face did not change, but her eyes did. "And they included the full roster," Jenna continued. "Your names, your ranks, your missions. It's not much, but it is written down now. Forever." Colleen spoke quietly. "Forever's longer than most people care to remember." "But not everyone forgets," Jenna said. "Some of us grew up wondering about the silences, about what was never said. We always suspected there was more." Colleen turned to her. "And now that you know?" Jenna met her gaze. "Now I teach my son to listen and to ask." A long silence followed. Then Jenna offered a small box. "This was found in my uncle's things, addressed to someone but never sent. No name, just a note. She'll know what this means." Colleen opened it. Inside, a compass. Old, worn. Its needle still moved. Her fingers curled around it like something sacred. "I gave this to him," she whispered. "In Ankara, after a blackout, told him it would always point him home." "I think he tried to return it," Jenna said. "I think he never stopped believing you'd show up." Colleen swallowed. The wind picked up. Jenna placed her hand gently on the top of the headstone. "He remembered you," she said, "even after they forgot him." They stood together for a while longer. Then Jenna turned to go. "There's a ceremony next month, a new memorial at Arlington. Your name will be etched into it." "I will not attend," Colleen said. Jenna paused. "Why?" Colleen looked out across the rows of unmarked service. "Because some things are not meant to be seen on marble. They are meant to be remembered in motion, in choices." Jenna nodded. She understood. Then she left. Colleen remained. She sat beside the headstone, her coat pulled tight, the compass in her hand. Rain threatened again, but she did not move. This was not about closure. Closure was a myth sold to people who needed the past to behave. This was about acknowledgement, about standing in the open with the weight of everything still unspoken, and refusing to look away. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at the Office of Military Archives. No return address, just a label marked, "For those who remain." Inside, one dog-eared notebook. A stack of operation reports stamped eyes only. A letter, handwritten. If you are reading this, the story is already out of my hands. I do not need a statue. I do not want a chapter in someone's book. I only ask that when the names are read, they are spoken slowly. These were not just soldiers. They were people, and they were mine. C.A. Weller. That letter now hangs in a quiet hallway inside the Pentagon. No tourists walk past it, but those who serve eventually find it. And when they do, they stop. Not because of what it says, but because of what it does not.